Hello, everybody. Welcome to Distance Learning 101. In this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different, and it was prompted by a question that a person named Jeremy put in the comments on one of the other videos. And their question was, do you have any ideas for band, how we could do band at distance? And my initial reaction was, I don't have any ideas for how you could do band at distance. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to take a different approach and to show how, as a distance learning designer, one might approach that problem of how do you do band at distance. And I thought this would be a good way to highlight how we would bring in some of the concepts that come up in some of the videos to start tackling this challenge of answering that question. So we'll walk through it. This will be a little bit of a longer video. It's probably going to be longer than 12 minutes, but I think it will bring in a lot of different things and hopefully be helpful for teachers that are stuck thinking of like, how can I do this and how can I get past this sticking point? The first thing is that people usually do end up on sticky points. As a human being, you generally think of the distance in distance learning first and make that really big and think of all the things that you can't do. So if we think of band, for example, we can't bring kids together in a band to perform music in front of an audience. There's no sporting events. There's no parades. There are no other large groups of people that you can even play for. How can you do band if you can't bring groups of people together to play the music like a band would play? So immediately you think, oh, we can't do it. And the brain focuses on the distance and it comes up with can't, all these different can'ts. This is pretty much the same for almost any distance learning experience. The first challenge was to build a distance learning world language Japanese course. And the point was, we thought about, oh, well, kids can't have conversations. You can't have spontaneous conversations. Kids can't get imbued in an all Japanese language environment, which we know is really important for developing world language skill. So we had all these can'ts that we can't do, and it can become really paralyzing, and people love to bring up those can'ts with you. But instead, if we think back now to that second or third video that talked about starting with the end in mind, let's take a look at what the learning objectives might be in a band experience. So we're going to make the learning big and the distance small and focus in on what we can do rather than what we can't do. And so with the learning part of it, let's think up some objectives that might be in there. Now, I'm horrible at music. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Growth mindset. I know. Great. All that kind of, but I'm really bad at music. I love to listen to it, but I'm going to get this all wrong. But just thinking all the top of my head, the idea I think is the important part. Let's think of what some objectives might be for a student in a band course that if I were the instructor, these are the things I would want them to leave the course with at the end. Now, there might be standards, there might be learning intentions, all these different kinds of things, but this is what I want to happen. I would want kids to develop skill at an instrument. Okay, they start in the fall or the spring or whenever it is, and they end up that course being better at playing the instrument. Probably a sense of joy of performance, right? So they make music and other people like it, other people appreciate it. So that joy of performance and the value of artistic performance in society. So that would be another thing I'd want kids to take from the course. An appreciation of music. So I'd want kids to know the difference between good orchestral and band performances and weaker ones. What are the components to a good band performance? What makes things work? All those kinds of things. And then lastly, one of the big parts, of course, of band is that we'd want kids to appreciate the part of being a piece of being something much larger. So you produce a small piece of music that combines with all this other music and you make something really, really wonderful. So it's that collaborative music experience that contributes to the band being a band. So, okay, now we could probably come up with some more. And if you're a band instructor, you can probably come up with much, much better ones. And you're going to think of them much more effectively than I would. But we've got a list of things that we can work with. The next thing I would do is in innovation practice, a lot of times what we do is we use this technique called how might we? And we take our challenges and we rephrase them in how might we questions. So we've got 4 here. Let's run through what that might look like. So the question would be for developing skill at an instrument. How might students develop skill at an instrument when they can't come to school? So now I'd start to think of as many ideas as I could in this category of kids getting better at an instrument. Well, the obvious one is they can practice at home. And I know from our own kids, there's often software that helps really facilitate that it can kind of evaluate the performance, the rhythm, and all these kinds of things. So maybe you have access to that. Maybe you don't, but maybe kids still can practice at home. So we're also starting to get some bare minimums that we need in order to make this work. So kids are going to need access to their instrument. Now, maybe some kids in a band, I'm not sure, but like the big drum thing, is that the schools or is that the kids? I don't really know. So maybe some kids are going to need different instruments or they're going to have to be willing to try something new. And maybe I'm going to have to find some kids some instruments. So maybe that means a letter to parents saying, hey, we want to do this. We're short 12 instruments. You got any lying around the house that a kid could borrow for 2 to 4 months in order to do this class kind of thing. So, but in other words, we're starting to realize what the problems to solve are, solvable problems are. We're starting to look at what the bare minimums we need to achieve in order to accomplish that goal. And we can also start to think of some of the other academic pieces that go with it. For example, if kids are going to practice at home, how am I going to get at that evidence of learning? How am I going to know they did it? Well, they're going to have to send me something, right? I'm either going to be a sound piece or a video piece that they could post. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. But at a minimum, we're going to have to find some way of getting sound and audio, sound and video back to each other probably. So that's another minimum that we've got, the problem that we've got to solve. Now, a cell phone could probably do that, but those are the kind of the constraints that we're working with. So, and then you could think, okay, well, kids could play and they could send daily pieces to me. But now if I'm getting 120 pieces of music every day and have to grade those, that's a ton of time. So how do you balance that out? Maybe we have on Tuesdays and Fridays, kids make a short 1-minute recording of themselves playing their instrument and playing a particular piece that I'm going to give them, kind of thing like that. So, and now the course itself, like what kids are doing, is starting to take shape. We've got maybe 15 to 20 minutes of daily practice that's involved there. And maybe you have to really emphasize that because kids are going to have to understand that this is a big part of what's going on because they're not coming to school. So there's different kind of expectations that have to be reset and all these kinds of things. But now we're starting to get a picture of what it might look like. Joy of performance is the second one. So thinking about the idea that I play music and it makes other people happy. That's a big part of what goes into a band. So we can't do it in a group probably. So how could we, maybe we could do that individually. Could kids learn solos? Could kids somehow post or present those solos to other people? Now, I know one thing I've seen. Here's an idea that might connect to the times. For example, I saw a tweet the other day that went like this. I'm 62 years old. I'm at home alone because my governor wants me to stay here. And the only thing I have with me, the only thing I have is my 15-year-old dog, and it's my birthday. And you're thinking, God, I mean, there. So could you get kids to reach out to that guy and just tweet back with a quick 1-minute video, say, hey, I made you a happy birthday song. And that starts to get at that joy of performance element there. Now, that's 2 minutes and a bunch of ideas. If we spent 15 minutes, we could come up with 15 to 30 ideas. And you want to try to generate a lot of ideas for these things because most of the ideas are going to be bad. And we're starting to, again, kind of make note of the minimums. Okay, so we're going to have to maybe get some kind of a release or some kind of thing, depending on the age of the kids, about could they interact with social media and stuff like that. Maybe, maybe not. But there's different parts here that we're starting to work through. If we go to appreciation of music, okay, well, maybe kids could watch videos of good band performances and bad performances. And maybe we could kind of talk about what the good things are and they could start to learn how to evaluate music. Now, this might not be something you would do at school, but maybe you could get at this in a distance learning environment. And then lastly, collaboration, where you present a small piece to get at that larger piece of music. This is the one that you might say, there's no way you're going to get the same thing. You know, it's like saying, okay, let's do online baseball. Well, you can't catch and throw. So maybe this part of it, you have to aim for good or decent rather than perfect. So maybe it's like, could we have pieces of music that kids learn in groups of 3 or 4? And again, this might be totally crazy. And then get them together on like Zoom or Google Hangout to perform it, and then you record it together and evaluate that way. Now, that might be a horrible idea. I don't know. And maybe that's a piece that you really say the effort and the intensity I would have to spend to get at that piece is something I just can't do. So we're going to have to put that one somewhat to the side and say we're going to concentrate on these other 3 or whatever, how many objectives there are, and do the things that we can do, realizing that it might not be perfect, but it can still be good. And there you go. I think that's kind of how I would approach the problem of, okay, what might we do for band at distance? Now, there are some tips along the way that I think kind of could be helpful as you kind of attack this too. One is I wouldn't do it alone. You probably know other band instructors. You probably know other band instructors that have a positive outlook on what's going on. And maybe you get together with a hangout or a Zoom meeting and say, hey, can we get together and go through some of the objectives that might want to have and then ways we might get at it at distance. I guarantee you, if you get 4 or 5 band instructors together on a Zoom meeting and attack your learning objectives and say, how might we's, you're going to come up with a ton of ideas that are going to be 100 times better than me just thinking through, with my limited capacity for understanding music, thinking through what the objectives and the how might we's be on my own. So I guarantee you'll be amazed at the ideas that will come up. The second is I would encourage you to avoid the naysayers. There are going to be tons of people that say you can't do it. If you go on social media now, there's quickly dividing up into kind of a couple different camps of educators. One camp is saying it's a total waste of time. This won't work. We can't do it. The others are trying to figure out ways to do it. So I would find people that are in that second group that are finding ways to solve the things. The other thing I would say is look for advantages. Advantages, there are hidden advantages because we're going to do things differently that might come up because you're doing something at distance. For example, maybe it's difficult for kids to practice instruments individually at school because you don't have enough rooms to do it. But now everybody's at home by themselves. They can practice to their heart's delight. If they've got their instrument at home, they can play music and they're not going to bother anybody else except their own family. Well, okay, maybe that isn't an advantage, but you get the idea. You know, maybe there's some things that can work for you. One of the things that we had when we were first designing online physical education classes, which people generally laughed at, said, how can you do online PE, right? You can't, you're going to have them play basketball together online. And it's like, no, you can't do that. That's a can't do. But we can do something along that kids could learn about themselves and kind of do exercise, individual exercise. And one of the advantages we found to online PE was the element that for a lot of kids in a lot of high schools, physical education, PE class, gym class is extraordinarily a cause of high anxiety for whatever reason. Either it's not a lot of confidence in their body, could be kind of overweight issues, a lot of the kids making fun of them, bullying issues, whatever it is. We get a lot of kids that take that course because they've had bad experiences learning that in a group of people. So there's an advantage for those kids to being able to get at that same kind of content by doing it themselves. So look for those advantages that might be hidden in doing it at distance that will not be apparent to you because you haven't done it at distance before. The last thing I'd say is it is super challenging. I'm not saying it's easy. There's a lot of things that we just thought of that are going to require work to do, but the key point is you're shifted from paralysis to solving problems you can solve. And that's where you want to be. Knocking down those walls, solving things you can solve, getting at those learning objectives, finding some things, some things that kids can do so they can get those similar learning experiences, aim for the good and not the perfect. It's super challenging, but the work gets much more positive once you get that beyond that paralysis point. With that in mind, a kind of 2 quick points and then we'll wrap up. One is that a growth mindset is super important. You're going to get better at this. The things you're going to try in the beginning, some of them might not work. The kids are going to find them hard. You're going to have to switch gears, change things up, move things around, try different things. But if you keep at it with that can-do positive attitude, you're going to find things that work. The other thing with that, I would open up to the students and say, hey, this is new for all of us. We're going to have to figure it out. These are the things I want us to get at. These are the things we want to do. I'm going to need your feedback. Let me know what's working. Let me know what's not working. Let me know what we can do to make this better. If you've got ideas on how to improve things, let me know. Make it a collaborative effort. I believe your kids in these times, many of them will respond with some really good ideas that can help you. The last thing I wanted to say is that it's doable. You can definitely do it. And there was in an email, I get a Thursday newsletter. And one of the things that was in there was this quote that I thought I would share at the end. And it's study as if you know nothing, work as if you can solve anything. And I think that right there, as I looked at it, I said, yeah, that's where a lot of us are, right? We're trying to study about this new thing called distance learning. We know nothing. Let's come at it with the beginner's mind. Let's try stuff. Let's make it work. Let's see what we can do. But the key part of it is work as if you can solve anything, because these problems by and large are solvable. For many of us, no, again, it's not going to be perfect, but you can get at a good learning experience with your students with that right mindset, with applying some of the easy to do things, the principles and concepts of distance learning and ways that we know we can make an experience good for students. So I know this was a longer episode. I broke all my rules of keeping videos short and things like that, but hopefully as kind of a thinking exercise, it would give you some ideas on how, if you've got a rather kind of out and left, I won't say non-standard, that doesn't sound right, but something that's going to be much more challenged, like automotive, woodworking, online physical education, band. There's a number of subjects for which this can be really challenging, and your initial reaction might be like, I can't do that. But when you actually start to problem solve around it, you'll find out that there are ways to do it. Hope that helps. Have a great day. If you've got any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. And thank you again for all the support. It's really great to see people. I'm always happy to hear when people have appreciated this series, because it's been really fun to do, and it feels good for me to be able to help. So I'm really glad to be able to do them. Thanks. Have a great day.